Did you hear in the Old Testament and the New Testament there is the mention of dance and the use of dance? But these are two different dances. What does our culture and society tell us about dancing? I guess it depends on who you talk to. Dance is a really huge part of the Old and New Testament. Miriam leads worship in Exodus 15 when they've crossed the Red Sea, and she starts to dance and she leads the people in worship. Dance is a very active part all through the Old and New Testament. It was used sacredly, and also it was used not so sacredly, it was used secularly too. But it's been there forever. And somewhere, though, in our history, and it seems like more in the history of America, but I don't know, sin became a source of sin. Dance and sin became synonymous with one another. When my mother was growing up in the Methodist church a long time ago, because she would be 90 if she was alive, they weren't allowed to dance. It was against the rules. Baptists still today, there's a lot of divisions of Baptists who don't dance because they see it as sin. But during our Old and New Testament, this was not sin. In our reading today from the book of Samuel, David is bringing the Ark of the Covenant finally into the city of David, into the capital. And he's bringing it in. And it's a symbol of the presence of God. And it's created out of metal and stone and cloth, but it's still the symbol of God's presence. And as David and his party enter into the city, and they want to welcome it into their midst, what do? They start dancing. And they're dancing as if they're dancing to the Lord, and they're in total abandonment. They dance in not just a side-by-side rock. They're really into the dance. And with all their might, they're praising God through their movement. I have a girlfriend whose name is Jodine Looney. And for 14 years, she struggled and struggled with very severe cancer, and finally succumbed to it. But while she was sick, she never lost her joy in the Lord. And she always had this quote from William Perky on her email, so that whenever you wrote to her or got anything from her, and this was her philosophy of life, she says, love like you'll never, ever be hurt. Sing like nobody's listening. That's me. Listen like it's heaven on earth, and dance like there's nobody watching. That was David that day. Now Michal, which is Saul's widow, is standing in the window, and she's watching David dance full out and all the people of Israel. And she goes ballistic. She hates it. She thinks it's vile and horrible. But in this moment, David's body, the chosen imperfect leader of the Israelites, becomes a gift to God, an expression of the joyful relationship and the covenant that he has with them. Have you ever experienced being lost in the presence of the Lord? Maybe not necessarily in dance, but have you ever been lost in an attitude of gratitude, or just been so in the presence of the Lord? That's where David was at. It doesn't stop there, though. As soon as they're done with the dance, David brings them all in and feeds every single one of them. They have this huge banquet. They have bread, and they have meat, and they have raisin cakes, and he just has this joy. The joy of the dance goes right into a community fellowship. By contrast, the gospel reading takes place in a banquet that is more like hell. It's a totally different kind of dance. A totally different banquet follows what this young girl does, Salome does. Sometimes I don't know about any of you, but I do have trouble sleeping through the night, and so I'll turn on the TV and I'll go through in the middle of the night, and I'm looking for something innocuous to put me back to sleep. And sometimes I come across these videos, these dance videos, music videos, where I could only describe it as being a XXX movie. I'm sitting there and I cannot believe that these women in the 21st century are willing to move their bodies and do their bodies in such a way that is exploitation of themselves. But that's what they were doing, and that's what Salome was doing back there in her dance. The second dance, the one in our gospel reading, is of a totally different character. It is not to entertain God, but to entertain men. Salome dances to entertain these people and bring them into the fever pitch. Now this is Herod's daughter doing this striptease in front of all his drunken friends. It is his birthday party, and they've all come to celebrate with him, and he has asked her to do this. And she does this for him. Her self-expression drives them all to distraction. And he says, I'll give you anything. Just, I swear on an oath, I'll give you anything you ask for, even if it's half of my kingdom. And what she asked for is the head of John the Baptist. Unlike the dance that followed David, that was around David, this dance is a dance that is delivering John the Baptist on a silver platter. That's the banquet that follows this. It is a dance of death. Not only did John the Baptist die at that time, but her spirit had been drawn away. When we do that kind of thing, it draws away our spirit from God. This banquet was a banquet of desire, of pride, of arrogance, and of revenge, because that was what Salome was about, was getting revenge against John the Baptist for holding Herod accountable. But lest we feel like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to us. I mean, how many of us do not actually have desires that maybe we don't want to have and are suffer from our pride and arrogance? And yes, maybe only in our sleep, we do seek revenge. Maybe we don't do it actually, but we do it. We all have experienced not the sacred dance, but the other dance that draws us away from our relationship with God. David's dance of life was a dance of life and a banquet of heaven. Salome's was a dance of death. Here today and every Sunday is a dance of life that we do. We do this banquet here. We come and we re-celebrate a relationship with God and a banquet with Him. Some of us process down the aisle. I've never actually danced. I wanted to. But we process down the aisle. We celebrate together. We sing. We do ballads. We do contemporary music. And our Sunday celebration includes a punctuation of stillness, of standing, of sitting. Some churches get to kneel. And we hug each other. Robin Williams has this thing he has. Robin Williams is an Episcopalian. And he has this list of 10 reasons why he's an Episcopalian. And reason number 6 is because we do pew aerobics. We're constantly moving in our church. It's a kind of dance. Our bodies and our voices and our movements become vehicles for expressing our relationship with God. And coming forward to the table is also, we think of it as receiving communion. It is also a time when you are giving yourself back to God, of recommitting yourself to God and coming forward. And we continue also every Sunday, not quite as elaborate as this, but every Sunday we have a banquet. And it is our celebration of coming together as a community and getting to know each other. These movements do not look like David's, but the intention is supposed to be like David's. We're having General Convention going on right now, and a tremendous dance is taking place in Indianapolis, Indiana. And it's very exciting because all of our church, the Episcopal Church at General Convention, actually our presiding bishop presides over 16 countries. But this General Convention is coming together in Indianapolis and voting on very particular and very specific things. And all these divergent thinkers, because no two people sit in a pew think alike. That's also a line from Robin Williams. We don't all think alike, but we come together in love because our intention is to give it to God. And that's going on today. So that dance is going on. And everything is happening, hopefully, to the glory of God up there. But the beauty and the challenge of these readings, as paired as they are, why did they put them together? Is that the point is that the dance and the banquet that follows it can be an instrument of life or an instrument of pain and death. We all have that. The potential is there. The question is, how are we as individuals being transformed by the dance we do as individuals with God? Are we being transformed at all? My favorite scripture is Romans 12:2, to allow God to change you and transform you into something new. Who I am sitting before you today would not be the same person that you would have known when I would have been in my 20s. I have changed and I have evolved because I invite God to grow me and to change me and to evolve me. Here we are like David, expressing what we know of God, what we have seen of God, our relationship with God, and here we are today trying to bring that all together and renew it and come back to it. But I want to look at Michal for a moment. She's standing up there in the window, if you can see her up there. She's the widow of Saul, and she stands in that window and she despises David because he's dancing freely. Why did she despise his dance? Why? Could it be that she did not know that kind of joy, and she hated it and actually envied it. When I first got out of college, I had the wonderful opportunity to work in film. And my first contract was 3 years traveling all over the country making Army training films. And at that time, they used soap opera stars. It was a blast. But I remember very distinctly when I was creating this piece here today, is that one of the men that I had to work with, one of the elderly gentlemen that was a sound man, I used to have to ride with him to location and back from location because you were assigned cars. And I would ride with him. And this man was a devout Christian who had lost the joy of the Lord. This man was the most unhappy man I had ever met. And the three of us sitting in the car with him were not impressed with the Christian faith as he presented it. And so I know that kind of lack of joy. And Michael was not a happy camper. This woman was not happy. Why? Was it because she didn't know the joy of the Lord? Or was it because she looks out the window and goes, nobody invited me to that party? Did anybody ever think to invite her to come down and dance? Or maybe she feared if she actually did go down, if she got the impetus to go down, maybe she wouldn't feel invited once she got there. You know, it's real hard to walk into a church if you don't know, if you're not being hand-led in. If you're coming in cold and uninvited, it's very scary. What was going on in Michael's head? She was being very real. She feared that she wasn't even invited, but I don't know. As followers of Christ, we often look to the world as being ridiculous. Did she see us as being ridiculous? Or are they actually seeing us as being people who have a closed society where they're not invited, where the party is going on inside these doors and they don't know what's happening because they've never been to church, but nobody's ever thought to say, come on in. I'll introduce you to everybody. I'll make you feel at home. What was Michael feeling? I happen to be one of those crazy people who absolutely loves dance movies. I have to admit it. And there's one coming up called Step Up Revolution. Have you seen the trailer that goes on? Because they do this thing down escalators. It's just so cool. And it's this dance group, and they call themselves the Mob, and they're in Florida, I guess Miami or something like that. And they're down in Florida, and they do these dances, and they do it. The group gathers together to do a public statement of joy and of fun. That's what they say in the trail. That's why we do this. We're having joy. We're doing joy. We're having fun. And then there's this new member potentially coming on. And the current member says to her, haven't you ever wanted to be a part of something special? Haven't you ever wanted to join in on something special? And she does join. And then in the trailer, it says that things change and their neighborhood's being destroyed by the wealthy. And so then this group called the Mob says, let's now use dance and change the world. Let's use our dance and change the world. And I thought about that and I said, if I wasn't a churchgoer and I said to somebody, I was thinking about going to church, and they say, come to our church. And I say, well, describe your church to me. And they said to me, well, we get together because we like to have joy. We have so much joy in our space, and we have fun. And boy, when we do get together, it's something special. And then we take what we've done here and then we go out into the world to change things. You know what I'd say? I'd say, take me. I want to be a part of that church. Can you say that about your churches? And if you can, whose job is it to make sure that you can say that about your church? It is yours. We must seek our own strength to draw together instead of dividing, to empower instead of belittling, to forgive instead of hating. And we, as Episcopalians, draw together to interpret rather than dictate. It is this dance that we celebrate when we come together. It is this dance that we are supposed to take out to be the joy to the world. How are you doing with that? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.